Welcome to the video lesson on the introduction to the trio Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. The Greeks used their creative potential to explain experience by resorting to history, tragedy, comedy, art, architecture, and so on. Their creative energies were also used to invent philosophy, defined as their love of wisdom. In general, philosophy came into existence when the Greeks discovered their dissatisfaction with the supernatural and mythical explanations of reality. Over the time, Greek thinkers began to suspect that there was a rational or logical order to the universe. Three men in particular stand out in this tradition: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, who lived in ancient Greece. Their conclusions were considered so ingenious and insightful that for many years they formed the core of the Western education system known as the classics. Much of the Western philosophy finds its basis in the thoughts and teachings of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Socrates was the first of the three great Greek philosophers. He didn't write any books or teach. He just liked to ask probing and sometimes humiliating questions, which gave rise to the famous Socratic method of teaching. Socratic method is a type of teaching device that asks a lot of questions, then answers questions with more questions. It's meant to create critical thinking and to eliminate ideas that form contradictions. Socrates also taught to focus on self-development rather than becoming wealthy, even seeing himself as ordained by the oracle to correct these mistakes in Athens. The only reason we know of anything he said is because his student and fellow philosopher Plato wrote down what his master taught. Xenophon, now the contemporary philosopher of Socrates, and the ancient playwright Aristophanes also wrote some of what we have now on Socrates, but it mostly comes from Plato. Plato called him the wisest and the justest and the best of all men whom he had ever known. Plato reconstructed his discussions in a set of writings known as the Dialogues. His unorthodox political and religious views were embarrassing and irritating to the leading citizens of Athens. Accused and convicted of corrupting the morals of the youth of the city, he was sentenced to death. He was ordered to drink a brew of poison, hemlock, which he did in the company of his students. The event is documented in Plato's Apology. Plato was a student of Socrates and wrote down most of the records we now have of his master. With that said, it's very difficult to discern which philosophies are merely the repetitions of his teacher or if they are Plato's own ideas and opinions. Whichever the case, Plato made significant impact on many areas of philosophy. He founded the Athens Academy, which was the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. He explored math, nature, politics, science, and morals. He wrote a famous treatise, The Republic, on the ideal society, in which he expressed the thought that a philosopher of all people should be the king. In the Republic, he discusses the ideal government led by philosophers and criticizes democracy, the government that convicted his mentor, Socrates. The theory of forms is an idea Plato pioneered, saying the world of ideas is the only constant one and that the perceived world through our senses is deceptive and changeable. What we need to deal with is the theory on mimesis and his objection to art and literature. We'll be doing this in detail. Aristotle was Plato's best student. He went on to become the very well-paid tutor of Alexander the Great, probably the highest paid philosopher in history. The founder of logical theory, Aristotle believed that the greatest human endeavor is the use of reason in theoretical activity. One of his best known ideas was his concept of the golden mean, avoid extremes, the counsel of moderation in all things. A key theme in Aristotle's thought is that happiness is the goal of life. He started his own philosophical school when he was 50 years old. It was at Lyceum, one like Plato's academy, that Aristotle probably composed most of his works, of which only 31 survive. The surviving works of Aristotle are grouped into four categories. The Organon is a set of writings that provide a logical toolkit for use in any philosophical or scientific investigation. Next come Aristotle's theoretical works, most famously his treatises on animals, like parts of animals, movement of animals, etc. Then cosmology, the physics, a basic inquiry about the nature of matter and change, and the metaphysics, which deals with a it's a kind of theological investigation of existence itself. Third are Aristotle's so-called practical works, notably the Nicomachean Ethics and Politics, both deep investigations into the nature of human flourishing on the individual, familial and societal levels. Finally, his Rhetoric and Poetics, they examine the finished products of human productivity, including what makes for a convincing argument and how a well-wrought tragedy can instill cathartic fear and pity. We need to do these things and other elements of tragedy in detail. Thank you.